poem called The Wet Floor, and it was written by Anne Wilson, who I've heard is a lovely woman. I'm on Grant, but anyway, here it is. Granny, my floor is all wet, he said. She thought he'd spilt his drink of water, but soon the flooding was up to her waist and her grandson crying, sitting on her shoulders. Her brother and son were fighting through town, wading past floating chairs, TV magazines, cuddly toys, all the street's possessions floating by like the worst version of the Generation Game. Her family reunited in their home, which had suddenly become just bricks. Her grandson still can't sleep, just images, water, can't even read now, just imagines water creeping over his face. Thank you very much.
My poem is called The Trouble Is. The trouble is not just the flood. The fact a stream out back is now a torrent, pouring underneath the wainscot in the small hours, silent as a rumour that this only happens once a century, and that by morning water's ankle deep, your cold bare feet shocked, unbelieving, as you step down into it, and outside wind is pitching trees in frenzy, rain cutting through dawn light. When you throw open the front door to set the torrent free, along with papers you'd left lying on the floor the night before. It's not just that as clouds break, carpets and the furniture reveal their saturated state, and there's no let-up in what's coming through your living room, and it's not simply when it stops and you have taken out your chairs and tables, rugs and all the small stuff, and you've started on the silt that covers everything, scrubbing, sluicing, hanging what you can out on the wall to dry. And you've lamented over Christmas gifts lost to the wet, and sorted out what can be kept from what is left inside the cupboards, and on low-lying shelves, seeing for yourself the damage to the plaster and the wood. It is, in fact, about the way a home can seem unsafe. It's how a marriage, which home should sustain, becomes somehow a thing for which some wife or husband must be blamed, needs reassurance that this will be stopped. Repairs more than insurance claims, drains must be made, and water flowing down the hill will be contained. The marriage and this home made safe. I think this is a very interesting, different take. Sea defence. Halfway up the cliffside, a chimney pot leans out as if a sandstone creature might at any moment light a fire. The front door shambled to matchsticks, barely keeping out the sky. Dead-end drain pipes scan for passing tankers. Above them, bouquets of cables suck up salt to the end of terrace. A doll's house view, 2 yellow flowered walls with empty shelves, a metal bed frame dangling, its legs in the air. On the beach below, cordons of timbers link arms against the jostling sea, the sea which mocks our fences and foundations, spits out shells from what it takes, and takes, and takes.
I live in the cusp of Salford and Manchester, so I was there when the floods happened, and this is just called Winkling. In those flip-flopped, stripy shorts and t-shirt summers, we scrambled the beach, wild-haired with plastic buckets, collecting winkles, Walney winkles, washed and dropped into a metal pan and boiling water, waiting with safety pin and vinegar, saving the shiny, black-eyed, oil-slicked, shiny sequins in a margarine tub to make a collage. The great wave of Kanagawa, a picture I'd seen from a far-off sea in a book. before I knew much about cruelty, or being vegan, or global warming, or how the water would eventually rise and rush into homes, or the 4,000 tonnes of spent nuclear fuel from Japanese reactors being pumped into my bit of ocean every day, connecting my Cumbrian Sea and Japan in ways I'd never imagined. The floods didn't come to me in a giant wave like Kanagawa. Instead, they slowly filled my screen like a huge fish tank of paddlers, waders and brightly coloured cagouled swimming fish. A bloke comically doing breaststroke across his kitchen for the cameras. Men with beer and wellies sitting stoically on tall stools in the pub. Others laughing outside on garden furniture as the ripples tickled their waists. The wave only crashing when the dark water finally gulped down living rooms, livelihoods and lives.
Thank you, Anne, for asking me to be part of this project. I was amazed that with such a kind of tight brief, just to write about a flood, in this area, more or less, that when you read through all the poems, each one's quite distinct and different, and everybody's picked up lots of little details. My piece is a kind of mixture of fact and fiction. Luckily, I was in Kendal at the time of the floods, because there was kind of several of them, I suppose. And my house was kind of okay, but I knew people whose houses were badly flooded. So mine is a kind of mixture of what happened to them, and I'm a Tom Waits fan, and I love his kind of stories about people and people in towns. And so I wrote this, which is called When Frank Came to Town. Transfixed by the soles of her cold feet, the drag of a life incomplete. Buffeted by memory's wings, she tried to think of different earthbound things. The river had flooded, the bridge was down, she'd loved him in a different town. Putting on her telephone voice, deja vu as lifestyle choice. White horses at the windowsill, 2 zebras headed up a hill. She'd missed the boat a second time, but scrubbed her doubts with turpentine. Unhooked a mirror in the hall, his reflection still installed, shoring up all her defences from mad seduction, creeping kelpies. She remembered all their spats and rows while living in the Fight Club house, 2 bargain basement billionaires stitching wounds and splitting hairs. His jacket's faded, liver spent, eyes mismatched, he'd live in a tent. He said he loved her fingerprints, her dancing feet, sweet insolence. She'd lead him here by the nose, past each letterbox open with a paper hose. She'd rustle fabric to arouse outside the flea market at each house. Crouching down by the 3-bar fire, they'd sing along with dehumidifiers. Mountainous bedroom, style by step-toe, square-foot dance floor, music retro. White horses gallop in the Gill, 2 zebras saunter down the hill. The river had flooded, the bridge was down, she'd loved him now in this sodden town. Thank you.
Hello, yes, I'm Jonathan. I'm a primary school teacher. I teach in Burneside, and Burneside was flooded for the second time this time round. And when you've got children who are experiencing that, you want to actually, raise their spirits. And I've approached the writing of this in a slightly different way, I think, to quite a lot of the poems in the anthology. So mine's a slightly different take. It's called The Leaky Welly Blues, and there is a bit of a refrain with it, which you can join in if you so wish. It's up to you. Don't feel pressurised. The Leaky Welly Blues goes like this. My raincoat is too big for me. My wellies leak like mad. With socks as damp as any sponge, no wonder I feel sad. The rain clouds seem to hate me, and a downpour now ensues. I'm soaking wet, and so I've got the leaky welly blues. I'm not sure what a chap's to do. Can someone help me, please? I'm so fed up, I bet that I'm more cheesed off than stale cheese. As far as weather forecasts go, I always seem to lose. I have no brolly, so I've got the leaky welly blues. The puddles gather all around. The ground is getting boggy. The rain has trickled down my neck, and everything feels soggy. Can't wait to see blue skies and sun. The summertime I'd choose, for then I'd say good riddance to the leaky welly blues. Thank you. It rains and rains and rains some more, and everything is wet. There's so much water Noah would have built an ark, I'll bet. But global warming is no joke. That's why it's in the news, and also why so many have the leaky welly blues. So if you find your feet are webbed because of constant rain, come join us in a chorus of this sopping wet refrain. Don't dwell upon the mildew that you've found inside your shoes. Pull on your boots and sing with us the leaky welly blues. Thank you.
So it's called Passing Through. The monks of Byland Abbey knew a thing or two about flood defences. Thacker, poker, draggly becks. They built a bunt to catch the river, let it out through culverts slowly. Eden, Amont, Greta, Cocker, build a bunt to manage water. Derwent, Loon, Crake and Beeler. Liza wanders, braided, wilded. Forms banks of stones and woody debris. Smithy, Stanner, Whelpo, Whitecoon, Thacker, Poker, Draggly Becks. And this next poem I'm going to read on behalf of Jane Merrit, who kindly hosts a group of writers monthly at her farm, near a sheep farm near Kirby Lonsdale, and directly and indirectly was affected by the floods. And so this is a different voice that's in the anthology. And it's Jane's poem, who's sitting at the back and asked me to read it. So it's called Flood. Ewes covered on the buttock of the park, dogged by wild water. Nose to nose they breathe each other's breath, face death that laps at dew claws, grasps their hocks, trolls bellies ballasted with clods of mud, their wool as slime on wasted backs and flanks. They haven't grazed, lain down or chewed their cud for days, and he sees them in the headlights of the quad and stops. Dogs crouch, awaiting a command to run across a bore that drives on stronger than a whistle to get by, to lift and guide the sheep to higher ground. An hour, an inch, 1,000 drops. A job too long, he left his flock enclosed by wall and gate, outflanked by water. There is nothing he can do but wait. The dog stood down. He turns into the wind and heads for home, to hearth and bed laid bare and cold. Sleep will not blur the hours till dawn, nor drown their terror as the water fills their lungs. Thank you.
It is extraordinary how many different voices there are in this anthology. Responses to the flood are something that we just used to see on television. And mine is a response because I come in and out of Kendal every day, practically. It's just really the houses that have been turned inside out. Act of God's. Who would have thought he'd need his canoe to travel from Baby Road to Morrison's in a sudden act of kindness? Who would have known the night before to lift the television, sofa, chairs, photos, lamps, and the dog's bed upstairs to the bedroom? And who named the storm Desmond, conning us he was a once-in-a-100-year event, wouldn't rage, plunder homes, leave families wading chest-deep from aquarium sitting rooms, afraid of heaven's tidings that took barely hours to turn villages and towns inside out, upside down. Go back 24 hours, fridges stacked with beer and wine, Warm, feast-filled kitchens, stars, clouds, children's hope, and hearths aglow, bright tinsel trees offered in front windows. Do only the gods know why the streets of Kendal are now paved in carpets, lino, debris, chairs and tables, curved, split and stripped of not just veneer, but Christmas. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christine, and I was going to write a poem about Cumbria, but I'm actually originally from Scotland, and so I felt more moved to write a poem about the east coast of Scotland, where I was brought up near the town of Montrose. Montrose, you may have seen it recently on Country File. It's famous for its wildlife reserve, the Montrose Basin. It's also famous for its golf course, and for the fact that there's quite a lot of coastal erosion going on there. And in my poem, I wanted to just raise some worries about the future. My poem's called No Landing. At St. Cyrus, the sentinel spire pierces clouds leaden dark. Where we tread, the cliff top crumbles in the deluge. Sandstone boulders crush violets, thrift, thistles that bend in the wind. Barriers flash red and white, block our progress. We must turn, look south to the great bight of the bay, where rivers swell and meet the white frothed sea whipped east to Denmark. We look to the lighthouse, the distant finger of Skerdiness, reproaching, blinking in afternoon gloom. At Montrose, waves eat gardens, drown golf links, crush homes. And pink-footed geese fly on through rain-swollen clouds without a haven for winter.
Okay, I'm Barbara Hickson. I live on the edge of Lancaster, but only a stone's throw from Cumbria. Most of you probably know that William Turner painted a watercolour of the Crook of Lone, and I refer to that briefly at the start of the poem. Crook of Lone, Joseph Mallard, William Turner. Crook of Lone looking towards Hornby Castle. Turner never saw it like this. His late summer colours, the sinuous line of a gently progressing river, bear no resemblance to what we face now. We stare at a graphite sky, water beyond watercolour, overlaying fields, erasing the curve of the river, which surges, peat brown and turgid, scraping out a wall, flushing silage bales over a submerged road. They blunder past, make for the woods where they cling to trees, black wrapping ripped, exposing ruin. Sound replaces light. Thunder obliterates all other noise as the loom stampedes through its new, demanding landscape. Afterwards, trees stand festooned 15 feet high, a curtain of plastic rags and grass. In the scrawled waterline of detritus, the artist's defiant flourish. Desmond was here.
December, Alston Moor, 2015. You are perfect, Rain. Some would say I'm insane when you're torrential, top of your game in your splendid grace, on march across the moors ascent. The wind is fluent as sea, and rain is beating syllables on rock, that seem unmoved. I'm struck by heavy lines, the rain's sheeted self like bands of soldiers stabbing solid air. I'm part of the battle. My feet are battery, a dump of mud I drag under the water like a snag of boulders, strange traffic. I trudge through rooms of mist, as if entering an eternal hallway. Crossfell dissolves, and the valleys below flood with fields of stone. O rain, you have excelled yourself, unleashed your silver blades, a pulse of tears on towns and cities, Carlisle, Keswick, Appleby, York. We are the talk of clouds, a light of something wrong in the arcades of rivers and lakes. We are the wake of our old beginnings, gushing, slithering out through canal and archway. Wasn't this where the real breach began?
Desmond. Haynes, a West Indies opening batsman who piled on runs with Gordon Greenwich. Tutu, a churchman with a wondrous laugh who battled apartheid and intolerance. Decca, a Jamaican ska and reggae hero, writer of Israelites, died in Thornton Heath. Liner, a consummate sports broadcaster, born, ready mustachioed in County Clare. These, not the stone that rocked my city, are proper Desmonds. It was what it was, a set of isobars not looking for a name. Its cold physics colliding with geography to fetch floods, dinghies, foul deposits and roadside piles of spoilt endeavour. Sling storm names onto sodden sofas, for anthropomorphism is 16 letters of chunk. And consider local Desmonds, whose chaffing mates in pubs and offices will tag them evermore as scapegoats. Think of Desmonds, routed by a name, and pregnant mums seeking other names. Think of such issues repeating like burps in future storms. Frank, Henry, Imogen, Phil, and other cosy names for the inhuman. Stop the storm names now. This is a cheat because it's a bit longer than it should be, and we said only new work. This is not entirely new, but I wrote this at the time when the Bishop of Carlisle, the first time Carlisle flooded, he explained it was due to sin, single mothers and homosexuals. I think we're a little bit further along than that, you know. Not much further. The directors of the university now just think, oh, well, there is global warming, there's nothing to do with us, you know. And when you hear people working together, so you hear them on the radio, and they say things like, well, I've got a truck you could borrow. You know, I've got so many, it was absolutely wonderful. And then someone phones in and says, yeah, but why are we spending all this money abroad? When we should, and you think, oh, there's always one. Anyway, this is called Flood Defences. And it starts with a bit from Robert Frost, which says, before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offence. The clouds weigh heavy, the rain comes down, but falls harder on our neighbour's town, until first a bridge then a bank give way and a human life is swept away in a torrent from which a hand like a snapped fence post reaches up and seeks tight hold of another's hand and grasps instead only darkness and rain. A story repeated again and again as someone's parent, daughter, son is suddenly and irrevocably gone, lost to this storm or the storms to come. Is this true? Or am I a liar? Should we build the walls around us higher? I ask since all that's left to say is none of this will go away. Our neighbour and our neighbour's house is just an empathetic heartbeat or 2 clicks of a mouse from being us. And on the wilder shores of a shared sea, some say that he and she and you and me are anyway all one. And though we can pick from the mud's cold stink what we think was made to last, and construct a future from a broken past, somewhere a father, somewhere a daughter will still lie lost beneath brown fields of water and the hills that rise and fall and rise again like the waves that lap the cold faces of the stones. None of this will go away. This hard place is where we must stay. Like fruit, like fish, like wheat, we are one genus, a family, one family, all branches of a single tree, bent by flood waters until we tear and break, and because where once there was land, there is no land, and where once there was water, the water is gone. We who remain to carry on the humdrum quid pro quo for our daily bread are made hostage to ever more savage turns of season, while this cold moon's implacable transit tugs the slow, slack, internal tides ever onwards. What do we want to wall in? Who do we want to wall out? Will you ask, in the end, what our story's about? At their shared edge, land, water, earth and air are unstable. They trade a single space the way neighbours break bread at a table, while the boundary lines on maps that define the limits of nations and neighbourliness are marked in our world, which is this one, by a razor wire, a stand tap, a shelter, shared scraps and a fire. And on some distant desert track driven not by water but by its lack, a family, like a river in spate, seeks out the only place left to go, but is held back by the barrel of a gun. Will this time come? Has it already begun? So grieve for what's lost and taste the new day. None of this will go away.
Shadows move under blue cathedral starlight, a pilgrimage to the water's edge. We come to bear witness to a terrible fate returned. Pilgrims greet each other with a nod and a new prayer. Are you dry? There is a car in the water. All around us, a great sacrifice. You only notice the silence after the sirens pass. The rains came and the river said, I will take anything I reach with my fingertips. She scored a line all across the city, new borders of silt, bracken and leaves. On one side is life as it was before. And where you stand, you can see it drowning. You only notice the dark when all the light is behind you. You tell flood tales of the dancing puppets of candlelight, without power but thankful for friends stir-fry and Scotch whisky, torches in a thick blanket, the warmth of a woman to lie with. We have stories of the trapped and of the rescued, of people helping people and letting everyone know we're okay. The river took so much. Tomorrow we begin again. Our faces light up or we check our batteries. Half full.
Hello, I'm Moss-Luffrum and I'm from Hickson.
where I've got a writers group. I know Nick and the others from Speakeasy and Patrick Cochrane in Carlisle. And the first writer I'm going to read is from Wigton Writers, a lady called Jean Hill, who was flooded for the second time just off Warwick Road, and walked around a bit like a ghost for the following weeks. It's called Diluvium. You watch it coming like birth, like a moth out of reach. The brown wavelets flutter and gouge, mortar from walls, soil from sewers, home from home. Your sofa swells like a budder, while your cat clings silent to the back of it. The river rapes my house. Now is the advent of our insurance. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light on a head torch, on a draining mobile phone, on an RNOI dinghy, on a young farmer's tractor, on the shell of a Salvation Army tuber, on a candle in an upstairs window. Abide with us while our house grows and we study flooding. Men with soft voices will adjust our losses to keep our rooms free from clutter. Soup and a smile draw us to street corners where we go compare tide marks and cupboard contents. Extreme feng shui. I wrote this one because of another friend who lived very near Jean, Deborah Brown, who's also a Wigton poet, which isn't in this book. She told me about what happened to her, and this poem came from that. It's called Warwick Road. In the dark veins of streets, it pumps up thick as blood. Mother and father are in the bedroom, camped on a quilted raft, not touching, not speaking. Eyes are black eddies. Shouts and torches strove the night. In daylight, all the beating innards are out, disgorged in new arrangements, alive with shrinking water and sprawling ghosts. Balanced vengefully on flat TVs, rows of sofas, like Dante's bargain basement, face each other sociably across the street pavements, along the drying streets. Two cats jump light onto the windowsill. Two pale sparrows follow. Egret. The egret has no voice, conjures from creekside to wet wool grey sky, stripped elegance of herringbone, sailing light over the marsh, white like hope. Lifting us from water dread, all our paths broken, we who have no other paths, our bridges crumbled in the force, our people bereft. You can keep your wooden arcs, rainbows, ravens, doves, sprigs of juniper. The egret is a sign. He is risen.
Thank you all you fabulous poets who've read, and thank you to the audience. I'm going to encourage Geraldine and Nick by doing this. It's a form of contemporary dance. Oh, it's magic. Yeah, it's magic. Yeah. It makes them go in slow motion as well, which is lovely. Thank you, man. So we have an announcement as to how much money has been raised by the selling of the Watershed so far, and it is. Should we drum roll?
It's actually almost £800.